There we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Twice as Lively with Ken Heckenlively. That would be me, your host. It seems like I need to do just a couple adjustments here. Hopefully all of this works. I'm going to see if my chair is at the proper height. I have the feeling it's not. Oh, there we go. It's up a little bit higher. I want to adjust my camera a little bit. Okay. All right. I'm sitting up a little bit taller. I like that framing. All right. As always, we start out with that simultaneous sip with Pete's Coffee. What is my order? My order is a cafe Americano with a little bit of room for cream and honey. Although I had a little bit of trouble opening the honey packets today. I think that may be a continuing problem. So remember, if you complain about those honey packets at Pete's Coffee being a little bit difficult to open, it seems like 20 to 30% of them are just difficult. And I hate going through trying to open honey packets, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I need to increase my grip strength. Okay. So with that being said, we'll go for that simultaneous sip. It is 11 o'clock on the West Coast, which means that you should not be having an alcoholic beverage. It is not socially appropriate to be drinking during the workday. But if you choose to, I'm not going to make any value judgments because I trust you to live your own best life. But I will enjoy some fabulous Pete's Coffee. Love that caffeine. A little bummed I don't have some honey in it, but we'll try to make this a good day anyway. All right. So, the title of today's episode, Embrace and Amplify Absurdity to Destroy It. Yes, this is a Scott Adams concept. I am giving proper credit to our dear fallen leader, Scott Adams, who has a new biography coming out soon by, I believe it's Joshua Pollack and Joshua Lasik. Is it? No, Joel Pollack. Joel Pollack and Joshua Lasik. Yes, two exceptional individuals. I have had the pleasure of being interviewed by Joshua Lasik, and he is somebody you should definitely listen to. Joel Pollack as well. Okay, so embrace and amplify absurdity. Why do you want to do it? Because the goody two-shoes warriors who want to make you talk in ways that benefit them don't like humor. Okay, so yesterday's broadcast, I talked about how the woke bitches are losing in Hollywood. And it struck me that I really didn't define what a woke bitch is. So let me define what a woke bitch is and how you can tell a woke bitch. A woke bitch is a woman who has a pinched face, meaning that it doesn't seem like she ever laughs. She's always searching for that thing that you did wrong. So if you are around a woman who only seems to have negative things to say, you might be in the presence of a woke bitch. What are some other things that a woke bitch will do? A woke bitch will always be policing your language, policing your very movement through the environment. If you have somebody who is policing your language and telling you what you may and may not say, get the hell away from them. Here's the problem with the woke bitch. The woke bitch believes that she's making the world a better place, which is why it's confusing that the woke bitch never seems to be happy. So, men and women, here's how you know if you're in the presence of a woke bitch. Does that person ever seem to laugh or smile? Is there an ease about them? If you are around a person and you find yourself getting tight, you might be in the presence of a woke bitch. It seems like what has happened in our public debate is that the woke bitches have about taken over and purged humor, comedy, and just good human connections out of our public square, which is why it is up to men to bring that back, even when those men need to become women in order to defeat the woke bitches. So, with that being said, I go to my favorite story of the day about Enes Kanter and his recent problems at a WNBA game. So, as you may know, Enes Kanter Freedom, is a basketball player from, I believe, Turkey, who ran afoul of Turkish authorities for claims that he made. And he has embraced being an American and our freedoms. It is wonderful. So I always struggle a little bit with these stories because if you really want to fight the woke bitches, it really requires you to embrace a fair share of dickery. Now, what is dickery? Well, it's the act of being a dick, but it's the act of being a dick in a way that moves things forward. Now, with my upbringing, I was taught not to be a dick. In fact, most people think I'm relatively diplomatic. I seem to like to get along with people. I embrace that, but yet I was also trained to have a brain. So when I see the tyrants who are now operating under the cover of woke bitchery, I understand that some dickery needs to be engaged in by somebody. I may not be that person to engage in the dickery necessary to defeat the woke bitches, but I appreciate those who do. So, with that being said, I just have to go over the brilliance of Enes Kanter. So, as you know, he is very much in favor of biological women playing in women's sports. His rationale is relatively simple, that there are significant physical differences between men and women, which makes it important that professional women's sports have women in them, because on average, men are stronger than women. This is proposition which, until 5 minutes ago, civilization has accepted since the dawn of time. So, with that being said, I've got this article from Fox News about Enes Kanter Freedom. Yeah, his real name wasn't Freedom. He took that when he became an American. Isn't that great? Isn't that great that we have an immigrant who so loves this wonderful thing called freedom that when they become an American, they make it their name? Okay, so this article by Jackson Thompson in Fox News. I'll just read the setup of this. Former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom said Chicago Sky guard Natasha Cloud made a vulgar remark toward him and repeatedly cursed before security removed him from Sunday's night game against the Indiana Fever. Freedom, who was sitting near the baseline at Wintrust Arena, said the confrontation began after he celebrated a three-pointer by Fever guard Sophie Cunningham, who, if you've been following this story, you know that she is one of the people who is saying, get men out of women's sports. Quote, Sophie Cunningham shot a 3 and I put my hands up to celebrate, Freedom said. Literally a couple possessions later, Natasha came back and started screaming and yelling and said, she's not going to sleep with you. And I was like, I'm not trying to sleep with her. I'm just here to protect women and support her. And then obviously after that, she started yapping and she started to walk towards me. And literally I just got up and then I was like, I'm just here to protect women. And that's all. As I said, until 5 minutes ago, that is what pretty much every sane person, every sane man believed was their responsibility, to protect women from other dudes who are saying they're women. So that goes on, and it raises a couple questions for me. Now, I'm kind of wondering why is Natasha Cloud not being sanctioned? Let's just think about this. Yeah, sports fans can be dicks to the players on the court. Was Enes Kanter Freedom a dick? Maybe, but so were a lot of people. That's sort of the whole deal with professional sports. So the fact that Natasha Cloud is heckling one of the spectators, well, that's not really expected behavior for a man or a woman. So the question to me is, what is the WNBA going to do about Natasha Cloud? My suspicion is they're not going to do anything. In other words, they're going to say, oh, no, she's got the freedom to do what she wants. If she wants to do that, that's fine. By the same token, they're not going to give Enes Kanter Freedom that same freedom. So let's talk about some other things that happened, because it wasn't just that event which happened in the third quarter. There was a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. So as Enes Kanter Freedom was being led from the auditorium, now again, what the hell is going on? Natasha Cloud is the one who was the aggressor. So why wasn't she led from the auditorium? So here's from the article. Still, without even directly invoking the debate overshadowing the WNBA right now, Freedom was ordered out of the arena. Now, just look at how wonderful that is. It's not an amazing sentence. Freedom was ordered out of the arena. See, there is a value to being an enormous dick. The value to being an enormous dick is you break down the absurdity. You call attention to that absurdity. So after Freedom was ordered out of the arena, he said security approached him and ordered him to leave without providing an explanation. I was like, can you please tell me why I need to leave? They said, look, you just need to leave, Freedom said. They pretty much pushed me to leave the gym. Footage showed arena staff touching Freedom and sharing intense words with him as he was being escorted out. Freedom said he asked an arena employee not to touch him as he was escorted away from the court. So now, does Freedom have an action for battery? Okay, it's not just the violation of his First Amendment rights, because he can say what he wants, because pretty much everybody else is doing the same thing during a sports event. You know what I mean? So something's going on there. This ain't right. So, and then when he asked again, they were like, listen, we can't give you any reason right now. Just leave, please, he said. I played 11 years of basketball in the NBA. I know how tough a security job can get. Still, I want to make their job even tougher. So there's a problem. It looks like the WNBA doesn't like Freedom, because fans will say stupid shit. They'll be dicks all the time. If they threw out every dick, they probably wouldn't have a half full auditorium. Okay. So Um, they had a little rally before the game to support Sophie Cunningham and her claims that women shouldn't play in men's sports. So that was going on. Um, but here's what I love, and this is why you just have to embrace and amplify the absurdity. The WNBA says that only women can play in the NBA, but it doesn't define what a woman is. What Freedom had was also he was wearing a shirt which defined a woman as a female member of the human race. Now, that's a lot better, apparently, than the WNBA could do because they can't define what a woman is. So that's why Ennis Cantor Freedom and a couple other male players are saying, "Oh, we're gonna join the WNBA because we identify as women today." Okay, so here's a little bit more about the issue. Freedom announced earlier this month that he intends to enter the 2027 WNBA draft. He said he is using the league's rules to challenge the WNBA to clarify its eligibility standards. The WNBA's collective bargaining agreement states that, quote, only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA, but it does not publicly define the term or establish specific eligibility requirements for transgender athletes. No transgender woman is known to have played in the league. After Freedom and former NBA player Royce White announced their intentions to enter the draft, the WNBA said its anti-hate task force has discussed transgender athletes and online attacks against players. Quote, there are no immediate eligibility matters affecting the WNBA, and we strongly denounce the bad faith efforts to use these topics to demean or marginalize others, the league said in its August 12th statement. Freedom rejected the characterization of his campaign as anti-transgender or anti-LGBTQ. Quote, I want to make very clear, because unfortunately many media organizations and many journalists are making me look like I'm anti-trans or anti-LGBTQ. He said, this is wrong. I respect anyone's personal decision. I do respect any kind of group out there. Freedom said the confrontation with Cloud has now made him more determined to pursue a place in the league, especially so he can play her. Okay, notice what Freedom is doing here. Freedom is doing exactly what Colin Kaepernick did with standing when the Pledge of Allegiance was being played or the national anthem was being played. It is a nonviolent way of protesting. And so we should really honor that. And so I think that this will continue. We are going to hopefully see more men step up and embrace and amplify this absurdity. This is wonderful because this is a great nonviolent way to bring about change. Specifically, the harm that is being done to women in college and professional sports by allowing biological men to compete in their events. This should not be done. As I said, up until 5 minutes ago, this would have been looked at as complete insanity. It is insanity, and hopefully with the diligent work of Dick like Ennis Cantor, we will all soon be free from this absurdity. Switching topics now. This section is called, Can't We All Just Have Some Fun? So I'm very interested in this question in our society of how we're just not having fun anymore. And I want to celebrate those instances where it seems as if creative people are making the decision that maybe we just need to have some fun. So I'm referring specifically to the latest episode of Star Trek Brave New Worlds, which had the deceptive title Level 5 Transporter Incident. Now, if you are a Star Trek fan, like I am, you know that a couple storylines have revolved around problems with the transporter. Sometimes the transporters have malfunctioned, throwing the characters into parallel universes. It's a lot of fun. And it's just sort of a great what if premise. And so in this episode of Star Trek Brave New Worlds, what happened is that Scotty was attempting to send a puppet the farthest distance any object had been transported to a friend of his. And then there was some accident which resulted in everybody on the Enterprise, except for Spock, being turned into a puppet. Yes, it was Muppet Star Trek. I started watching this and I'm just going, oh my God, this is so stupidly fun. I just have to watch it. It was great watching the very logical Spock try to interact with a bunch of puppets who could no longer control the Enterprise. I won't give away the twist at the end, which makes you understand that perhaps this never happened, but it was just good fun, you know, and I appreciate fun. Let's talk about some other fun news. One of the best action adventure series after Indiana Jones and The Mummy, which The Mummy is coming back. So that is another bit of fun news. But one of the underrated action adventure series has been National Treasure with Nicolas Cage. And I could never understand why that series of movies didn't continue, because it was both fun, because nobody is more fun than Nicolas Cage, and the setup always involved mysteries around American history. So it had action, it had Nick Cage. You learned some things about history. It was great fun. So I'm happy to know that National Treasure is coming back. I love that Brendan Fraser is returning in The Mummy, and you can bet that I will be glued to the television for the next episode of Star Trek Brave New World to see what crazy thing they do this time. Yes, we need fun in our lives, and I applaud anybody who does it. Okay, now we're going to shift back to the political world. And I'm kind of troubled by everything that's going on about the Charlie Kirk assassination. And I'm troubled in the same way I felt troubled when I was a young man and I had a conservative ideology. So I had this conservative ideology, which, if I would say in the late 70s, early 80s, it was very pro FBI, pro CIA, pro America, and pro corporations. So I was, very much a right wing guy. However, there were some individuals who were left wing intellectuals, oftentimes criminal defense attorneys, who had radically different takes than I did. And while some in the conservative movement would call them names, I never engaged in that kind of name calling because I'm not a dick. And I was kind of fascinated by what they had to say. And so I didn't resort to name calling, but I didn't exactly agree with them. But I just kind of noted their arguments. And as time passed, I found myself more and more understanding the arguments that they made and accepting their arguments. And so when I look at myself now, I say, I'm called right wing But if you actually look at what I believe, it's kind of left wing thought from the 1970s. Yes, I still love the individual members of the FBI and CIA, but do I trust them as organizations? Not on your life. Just like I don't trust the Catholic Church. I mean, when the Catholic Church broke faith with its parishioners in the clergy abuse scandal, that was just too much for me. Um, I cannot say that the Catholic Church did the right thing in that. In fact, it's extremely disappointing to me as a lifelong Catholic how much the Catholic Church abandoned its own parishioners. So I say that because I find myself in the same sort of boat. I was not somebody who listened to Charlie Kirk. My wife was a big time listener of hers. And as I listened to him, I said, okay, he seems like a nice, earnest young guy. I thought a couple of his beliefs were out of touch with the times. Um, I'm not in favor of this man is always in charge of the family, woman is always staying home. It really depends on the couple and what agreements that they make. But a lot of what he said, I really liked. So I find myself looking at his assassination and trying to figure out. So I have zero skin in the game. Uh, you know, so I'm just kind of curious what is going on here because even though I have no skin in the game, what I do acknowledge is I do acknowledge that Charlie Kirk was probably the most important political figure to young people in America today. And his death has had a profound effect on them. So I want the truth about that because in my life, I don't feel we got the truth about John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King. I don't think we got the truth about Watergate. I don't think we got the truth about 9/11. I don't think we got the truth about Iraq. I don't think we got the truth about Russia collusion. I don't think that Trump was involved with the Russians. And we didn't get the truth about the 2020 elections. We don't have the truth about vaccines and autism. There's just so much. I mean, pick your conspiracy theory, and there are good reasons to question the prevailing narrative. So, what I look for is not necessarily the person who can denounce the other side in the most stern terms. So, therefore, if you call somebody a demon or satanic because they have questions, just leaves me cold. What I want is a good, honest debate. And I have to say, I really take my hat off to Brett Weinstein for hosting a debate between Jimmy Dore, who is very skeptical about the Charlie Kirk assassination narrative that's being put forward, and Viva Frei. I've watched about 20, 30 minutes of it. From commentary, I understand that Jimmy Dore seemed to have done a better job than Viva Frei. Although at the beginning of it, it seemed like Viva Frei was also saying, we've been lied to a lot about a number of things. So I just really take my hat off to Brett Weinstein, Jimmy Dore, and Viva Frei for engaging that debate and apparently avoiding name calling and just focusing on the evidence and the logic. So I don't know what I think about Charlie Kirk's assassination. As an attorney, I was trained to wait until all the evidence came in at trial, and then it was subjected to vigorous cross-examination. So that's kind of where I am at this point. So for me, at this point, it's a free-for-all. There are a lot of things that are suspicious. I did an earlier broadcast, which I said, okay, let me just count a number of things that seem odd about the Charlie Kirk assassination and its aftermath. Relatively quickly, I came up with at least 10 different questions, 10 different pieces of evidence or narratives that don't really seem to make sense. So I think that there's a lot that we have to learn about the Charlie Kirk assassination. And for me, I'm just kind of sitting on the sidelines. I'll be listening to all the arguments. And, you know, after we've had a good, thorough debate, then I'll come to a conclusion. But I really encourage everybody, you know, listen to everything, but try not to be a dick to the other side. Okay? Let's just talk about the evidence. None of us thinks it's good that Charlie Kirk was killed. And all of us agree that the guilty parties should face justice for that. And let's proceed in goodwill. I understand there are questions about whether some people are being manipulated. Again, I don't know the answer to that. Yes, I'm against manipulation. I'm against any entities paying influencers. That just goes without saying. Do I have evidence that they're being paid? No, I don't. I do have to note that Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna is putting forward a bill that if influencers are being paid by foreign entities and hopefully also domestic entities, because domestic enemies can be just as bad as foreign entities, that they have to disclose it. I think that would be a great step forward. Pete's Coffee is not supporting me. They're not giving me any money. I'm not paying them. Okay. I want the AI to clip this next segment. This next segment is called Trump is the hardest working man in the government and why it matters. Here's something that I don't think a lot of conservatives understand. I don't think a lot of conservatives really appreciate how messed up our government is. And for most politicians, the system is rigged, and it's rigged so they can't really make change. How do you overcome that? You overcome that by working harder than the bad guys. Trump is the hardest working man probably ever to be president. Now, you can go to multiple sources who will confirm this, that Trump is up late and at night working, and he's up early in the morning. Some people asking, does the man ever sleep? I think that is true. Now, here's why it's important. The bad guys have set up the system so that it takes an incredible amount of work to change something. The bad guys are lazy. What they count on is that the president, whoever that is, Democrat or Republican, whether that is Barack Obama, George Bush, Joe Biden, they get in and they say, well, I can't really fix things, so I'll spend a couple hours a day trying to fix things, and then I'll just go play golf or take a nap or go to Camp David. And they get their names in the history books. And since they don't cause too much controversy, the majority of the public says, oh, they're a nice guy. Look, yeah, they're doing things. But Trump sees it differently. Trump sees a fundamentally broken system, and he realizes that the flaw in the system is the bad guys don't expect the good guys to work hard. So, what does Trump decide to do? He decides to outwork them. Now, I'm really happy to take notice of the fact that Glenn Beck, the commentator, is saying something which really resonates with me. And if you listen to Glenn Beck these days, he talks about how Trump in his first term realized that our government was like a house with a broken water pipe in the basement. And so what he needed to do was he needed to wrap that pipe with tape, get the water out of the basement, and then our country could take off. Well, lo and behold, we had COVID happen, and then we had the 2020 election, and Joe Biden and the Democrats got in. And in Beck's telling of it, then they decided to really break the system. So Trump got in there and he saw that, okay, this time I can't just wrap the pipe and drain the basement. I need to do a remodel. And so in Beck's telling of it, Trump is working as quickly as he can to do a remodel of the house. Now, do you like it when a remodel happens? No. Do you hate the workmen who are remodeling your house because they're making your house difficult, or you have to leave your house and find another place to live for a couple months? Absolutely. But it needs to be done. And so for those who are asking questions about why Trump is doing so many things, including the Iran war, it's because this is how we fix the system. I think that Iran has been up to a lot of no good. Now, whether that is our intelligence agencies or the intelligence agencies of other countries making that happen, creating a perpetual state of war, I'm not sure. But I've seen enough about Trump to give him the benefit of the doubt. And so at this point, I seem to be in agreement with Glenn Beck's point of view that whatever you think about Trump, just save a little space in your mind and say, maybe he's engaged in the remodel of our country. It's going to take a while, but once it's done, we're going to look back and think he was one of our greatest presidents. So that's the message I'm going to be giving from now until the midterms. Trump is working harder than any president in your lifetime to fix things. You need to support him, and you need to support the Republicans, not because the Republicans are perfect. In other words, they got a lot of problems, but it is the best way to bring about this change. If any of you have done a house remodel, you know there are the things you wish you could do and those things that you can actually do. So I encourage all of you, go out, vote Republican, give Trump a huge victory in the midterms, and this remodel of our country will go much faster. That's all I have for today. I hope this has not been the best part of your day. I hope the best part of your day has been listening to the people in your life and having genuine interactions with them. Thanks, and I'll see you later.